Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on Age of Heroes, the quest for optimal wellness, I'm proud to bring you Dr. Barbara Becker Holstein of the Enchanted Self, and we are going to be transversing through the gateways to enchantment to live fuller, healthier, and happier lives. Greetings, Barbara.
Good evening. It's great to be back, and we are going to do some mental traveling. We're going to talk more about these 7 gateways and how they can really affect and help you in your own life and even in your family, and you can reach out to friends. You'll see that they have a quality of magic about them. It's a little bit different than the normal way that the word magic might be used. So let me try to explain. I decided that there are 7 gateways that we need to work through in our lives. Now, they're not the only gateways, but they take a big slice of the gateways of life. And of course, people look for the gateways that particularly appeal to them. And that means that it's good that there's a whole bunch of gateways. But these are the ones that I have felt are quite useful. And you'll see where the magic can come in as we discuss them a little bit. Last time when Hercules, you and I were on the air, we focused a lot on just what the 7 gateways are.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll very quickly just review that for people that weren't here last time. The first gateway is the gateway of self-esteem, self-appreciation of yourself. It may sound a little selfish, but it isn't. It's the gateway that you need to develop in order to find your destiny, to do good works, to be available to other people, and to really, really make a difference in the life that you lead, hopefully for the good. So it's a very, very important gateway, and it helps with resiliency and self-esteem. The second gateway is a little bit like it, but it goes more to the history of who you are in the placement of your family and in terms of the world. So if we can see ourselves as one piece of the tapestry in, say, the last 500 years of your family, it's very different than just thinking of the history of you and your own parents and maybe your siblings, because there is a deep fabric behind you, or you wouldn't be here, for all the people that had to live old enough to have children, so that generations happened continuously. You can only imagine, but never really know the talents of people behind you, their strengths and what they had to endure. But one thing that you can know more about is the more recent anthologies and ancestry information. And to be proud of different things you find out just interviewing your parents or grandparents or aunts, uncles, cousins, maybe disappointments, maybe problems that came through the generations. But that's your history, and I think it's very important to know some of it. That's the second gateway. The third gateway we're going to talk more about tonight, and this is the gateway of meeting your needs. If you don't deeply understand what your needs are, you're not going to meet them. And if you don't understand how to meet them, you're going to fail time after time. And that feels awful. It's just terrible, particularly in my work over so many years dealing with women. So often I've had clients who just could never get past a gate that closed for them, whether it was they didn't perhaps even graduate high school. They never had a chance to go to college. They never had a chance to be interviewed in such a way that they could see what career they might really have enjoyed. And so a whole part of a person gets lost when they don't know how to meet their needs professionally, and also if they don't know how to meet their needs personally. Many of my clients, and I should mention I'm a psychologist working in practice with my husband, Russell Holstein, and I can't even remember the names of hundreds of clients at this point, because just like you, Hercules, working in the schools and stuff, comes a point where you've seen hundreds of people, over the years. And so many times I've worked with people that don't know what gives them pleasure, don't have a good sense of what will keep them happy as they age and useful. And of course, there's always a chance they're married or living with somebody who just loves to put them down, and that doesn't help either.
No.
So we're going to come back to that. The fourth gateway is not only meeting your needs, but building pleasure into your life and a sense of joy. And that can go from anything from a religion that gives you pleasure and joy to taking care of a neighbor's baby when the neighbor's sick. It can be planting tulips. I have no capacity to know what will give a person joy beyond some sort of standard things. Are you even, are you eating well enough? Are you sleeping well enough? Are you being treated kindly enough by people in your life that it would be reasonable to assume you could reach for some joy? So I know the basics, but what's really going to do for you is your journey. And then we have, after that, finding tribes in which we can belong. Now, the pandemic did just an awful job on all of that. Most of us, I should say many of us, we were in minor tribes. I went to the gym, I had my office to see clients, I went to a synagogue at times, I had relatives, I had my mini tribes. But the pandemic, where we had to stay home a lot, ripped into that. So a lot of those fabrics were temporarily destroyed, and it's very hard to get back to them. And it's really, this is just a tremendous thing that's happened in all over the world because of the pandemic, because we are social animals. And when we lose some of those social contacts, it's very hard to get them back. And we even lose parts of our memory capacities, because sitting around the house, the brain is really clever. I was reading this article that explained it so well. When we have a monotonous life, the brain decides, I'm not going to bother to record this. No, it's my waste of time. That's why so many people can't even remember what they did during the pandemic. The brain records highlights and special times. It can be a bad time. You're being robbed in front of your house, scared to death. The brain will remember it till you're 92. Or it can be a wonderful time, the day of your wedding, a special person comes into your life. And I can remember my father a couple of days before he died. being so explicit in his memories of being a little boy and the tenderness he felt toward his mother and the way he was cared for. But some of the things that happened when he was, say, 45, he didn't remember. So the brain really wants us to be attached to action, to change, to variety, to culture, to stimulation, to beautiful music, to new places, to helping people, all these things. And we have to work on it because it can slide away so easily, as we saw in the pandemic. And the sixth gateway is sharing our wisdom, being a mentor and having mentors. And some people are very good at being mentors, and they can mentor casually almost anybody, just in the way they sort of approve of the person and make comments. I love what you're doing. That's a great idea. Keep going. And there are certain mentors that only certain people notice. Like very few people notice how trees can be mentors, or how flowers can be mentors in the beauty that they give off, or the way a storm can be a mentor in the capacities to change forever certain things that happen in a storm. And, there's sort of secret. That's where I said there are some mysterious elements to the Enchanted Self work. There are these undersides and these hidden parts of all this sort of normal stuff that people have heard about, like finding a profession and being a mentor and making friends. There's the other sides of them. There's the miracles, like you're taking a public bus and you sit next to someone, and 8 months later you get married to that person. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but it sure happens. I had a girlfriend, she's moved away now, and I remember that she had some very interesting accidental things that always happened to her. For example, she was moving out of her small apartment at that point, and she was desperate for one more suitcase and really felt kind of worried. I don't know remember now whether she didn't have the money. I think it was more she didn't have the time to go out and buy a suitcase. And she gets in the elevator in her building, and there's an old suitcase, and there's a little piece of paper on it, and it says, "Take me, I'm yours." And there she goes with her suitcase. And there's another story that my daughter Jessica passed along. It happened in Europe, I think in Germany. A family was there for medical care in the hospital, and it was a religious Jewish family, so they were preparing for Shabbos, which means they could no longer go out to the store to buy something. They were just going to make do with the food in the hospital and whatever they could find. And the woman realized that she wasn't feeling great, and she felt she needed food like bananas, like probably for the potassium. And again, this is another elevator story. She steps into the elevator, and there are 2 bananas in the corner that someone probably had dropped. So, I love this side of life, and I think it's wonderful that there is some magic, and there are things that happen behind the scenes. And now, I guess I'm done to the last one, which is positive action and the notion of good deeds. And if all else fails, then you can always boost your mood and your capacities a little bit, very often a lot, by doing some good deeds. So that's the overview of 7 gateways to happiness. And now let's look a little more carefully at how do we go about meeting our needs, which is the 3rd gateway.
And I will let you know that I'm going to transverse the 7 gateways and attempt each one in turn. I did this around the time when I first met you, and I was reading the Enchanted Self. So I tried out the system and I found it very beneficial. So it's been a couple of decades, so I'll take another journey through them.
Oh, that would be great. Yes, I like that very much. Keep us posted.
I definitely will. I'll chronicle it on social media, and this way people will know how I'm doing.
Good. That's great. Yes. So let's think about meeting our needs. We don't get a lot of education about how to meet our needs. In fact, we live in a society that can often make us feel that we're being selfish if we want to meet our needs. So at each stage of life, we have to do some thinking about what sorts of needs might we try to be meeting. I think obviously for little kids, they really do need parents or surrogate parents to help them meet their needs, because there are certain things that have to happen in childhood. One of the major things that needs to happen is children need to be able to separate from their parents or surrogates so that they can get more accustomed to being their own person. But they also need to have wholesome people who won't hurt them to constantly run back to. So even if a kid is learning to ride a bike, what he doesn't need is a bully to come along and flick his arm so the bike goes over. You know, what he needs is, if he falls off a 2-wheeler, someone to be right there to help him, whether it's an older sibling or a parent or a neighbor, and he can't do it all himself. We really need these people, even if they just walk in and out of our lives. We need them because it's a learning experience constantly. In school, children need good teachers that are wholesome in the sense that they're not looking to tease the kids. They're looking to understand each kid and try to teach to that kid's needs. They have a good sense of the psychology of teaching, obviously. You know, so there are a lot of things that kids need when they go to school. Unfortunately, once again, I just have to mention that the pandemic, as well as school shootings, have really made it much more difficult for our children. You know, when children fear that there may be a shooter coming into the building, it's nothing like those of us up in years ever experienced in our classrooms. The biggest thing I ever experienced was, I can't even remember one. We used to have to hide under the desk in case there'd be a bomb or something.
Yes, I remember.
Which was so ridiculous. But I guess at some level we kind of knew it was just some government person's decision. Other than that, I remember I was once pushed on the ground, and I remember the fellow that did it. And then I guess I backed up and I hit my head.
Ooh.
I probably got a minor concussion because I had a headache and my mother came and got me, and I rested for a day or so. But for the kids today, and I've brought some of them onto my podcast shows, they've talked about being terrorized by, on one hand, definitely wanting to go to school, and on the other hand, being afraid of these possible random acts of violence. So we have a long way to go in our country around some of these things. But going back to meeting our needs in general, we need people when we're teenagers that'll help us make the right choices. And very often, if you're lucky, it's your parents, even if they annoy you and punish you and take away your phone or whatever. If they're mentally sound people, they probably have your best interests at heart on the deepest level, I think often even deeper than a spouse, because there's something about protecting a child that's extremely strong. And with a spouse, there's lots of issues that we keep riding in and out of over a marriage, a relationship. And sometimes we could cure, we get a little mean, then we get nice again. That's a different position than most parents see their kids in. They may be tired and they may be frustrated by the child, but they're trying to help the child do what's right. And I'll tell you, I love to tell some of the stories about my father, because he was the old-fashioned kind of dad that did things right, and I may have told this story once in you've been, I think, on this show once, the old time radio where we tell our shows.
Yes,
stories.
yes.
Yeah, but it's worth telling again, just one of them. And that is that it's a social story about dating. My father was a superintendent of schools. He'd always be invited to conferences. And one conference he was invited to, my mother couldn't go because my mother had a baby and I was going off to college in a few months. So we stayed at this high-class male college campus. They had rented it out in, I think, New Hampshire. Doesn't matter what it was called. It was a nice campus. There were probably 150 people there, some with children. And there were a lot of discussions about education. And yeah, I had a great time. My father took me to a play, a ballet. We sat and had dinner with other families. It was one of those special occasions where you feel like life is great. And the last day, it suddenly came to my mind that I had been staying in some young man's room, a dormitory, that he'd probably be returning in the fall. And why miss an opportunity to not meet some new guys? I mean, this is where my head was. I was a kid. So I leave a note on the bed that said something like, "Hi, I'm Barbara Becker, and I'll be at Smith in the fall, and here's my information." Never really thought about it again at that point. Of course, I went to Smith and nothing ever happened. I never met anybody who said they had found a piece of paper. But life goes on. And when my father passed away, we had to clean out his file cabinet. And in the file cabinet was a folder with my name on it and various things in it. Some of them I forget at the moment, and some made perfect sense. And there in that file was the note that I had left on the bed.
So he took it and put it in the file.
Yes, he took it because he knew it was inappropriate, but he never embarrassed me about it. Never mentioned it. So.
What a wonderful memory.
Yeah, it was, because he cared enough. I mean, look, I don't think anything horrible would have happened to me, but he did his due diligence as a father. And that means a lot.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, we remember those things. And I don't want to get too caught up in that. I remember speaking of that, grandparents are very important too in meeting our needs. They can
Mhm.
often do a lot of the job that parents don't have the time or the focus. And my grandmother's mother, my grandmother Rose, really did do a lot of my early childhood investment in interesting things. She had an old Victrola that you turn to get it to go, and lots of music, and some of it was operatic, and played it for me, and lots of stories she told me about how people lived years and years, even before her time. And one of the things I remember is she wasn't feeling well, but I was going to come over and visit, and she walked the 3 blocks to the bakery to get the cupcake I liked. You remember that.
As I shared in the last installment of this series, I follow various challenges as I move through life. Like right now, I'm going to do the gateways to enchantment, but I've done things like that. And recently, I did all the exercises in the book about ancestors and doing work with the ancestors and with the family. And it was eye-opening in that I thought I had outgrown or grown past a lot of the family conditioning or the cultural conditioning that came with being Greek. And I thought, although I treasured some of it, I thought I'd grown a lot past it. And this book made me realize that I hadn't. So that was a revelation. And it helped me see my life in a totally different way, a way that was in a way smaller, but another way where I was part of a stream moving through time, from the mists of prehistory until the mists of tomorrow. So it made me feel part of something moving forward. And although I could only see back a few generations and beyond that into stories and legends, and in the future, who knows what will happen or where things will go. It got me in contact with my roots. And my life, until I realized these things, had been very rootless, I thought, and that I don't stay anywhere for very long. I move around, I do different things. But it helped me realize that I have roots, that they're deep roots, and they go very, very deep and very, very firmly into the earth. So again, that was revelation. It contradicted everything I thought I knew, but it gave me a new understanding and it made me more humble.
Yes, yes. It reminds me that one year when it was Sukkot, which is a Jewish holiday where we sit in these kinds of tents or huts to get, I imagine, to get closer to God in certain ways and earth and so on. But I was alone in this tent, and I really made an effort to feel the memories and closeness of not only my grandmother, but her mother, who I only had known as a baby, really, but she was very, very loved in the community, and people came to her for advice. And so I felt I really started to cry. I felt very moved. I felt like I think it's the Chinese that look 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. And I felt I was doing some of that. It was very, very engaging.
Yeah, I find that these insights, they deepen and broaden our lives. I did another exercise once, which I didn't see the point to it, but I did it anyway. And it was try to find 2 words that say everything about you and everything that you do. And I wonder, how can I summarize the extent of my being in 2 words? But I found after I thought about it and I did all the reflections and the exercise in the book, that my two words were living mythology. And those two words will tell you everything. Sorry about that. So living mythology describes me. I'm living mythology myself, and everything I do is, if you look at it at its most basic level, living mythology.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. And I think my two words are really enchanted and self.
Yes,
And the enchanted, you had come up with the enchantress, and we played with that a lot.
for a while, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. But I think that the word that I've really held on to is more enchanted, because I think everyone can find that spot within themselves with the right help, with the right luck, but it's there because we're much, much more enchanted by opportunities, by friends, by the magic moments of life than we really allow ourselves to understand and be part of a lot of the time. Science is very, very important, but science doesn't explain everything.
No,
Nothing explains everything, And the word self, I love, because somehow people are put down for being involved with themselves. But in order to really achieve high points and magnificence of giving and helping and living, you've got to know yourself intricately. And when selfie pictures came out, taking these cameras where you could take a selfie, you no longer had to send anything off to the drugstore and schlep there 3 days later to get it and pay money. There was so much discussion that, isn't it, like arrogant or selfish or self-centered to take all these pictures of yourself. And I felt extremely strongly that as far as women over 50, it was the best thing that ever happened to them, because I can document that no one's interested in taking my picture most of the time, even when, well, I should put it differently. If family and friends are together, of course, we'll all cluster, and get your picture. But no one is interested in my picture in the sense that, even on my birthday this past year, I had to make sure I took my own picture, and I was with friends. There's just something in the human nature. But anyway, for women, now we can have a diary and pictures. We can take any pictures we want to. We don't have to ask someone else to hold the camera. It's just one more way that life became better for women in the sense of control. Now, it's great. I mean, I wish I had a husband that wanted to take my picture. Russell's a great guy, but he doesn't interest him at all. But okay.
That's a shame. You're very photogenic, Barbara.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is, not only am I photogenic, I never look the same. If I look at 30 different pictures of me, it's like, are these past lives coming through or what? It's amazing. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, that's fun too. I'm just thinking, I don't know if I can grab it fast enough on this type of program. Oh, I'm just going to rip this off the wall. It's something I never thought of doing, but why not? This is me when my husband, of course, we're probably 20 years younger. but in a million years, I would not recognize myself.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's not, yeah, it's like, who is she? Russell, I recognize, he never changes, except he has white hair now. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I can see exactly what you're saying. It looks like a different person. If I looked at the picture, because you told me that this
Yeah.
was the effect, I know it's you because of the configurations of your face. But if you hadn't told me it was you, I wouldn't have thought it was you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. See, there's so much that we just don't fully understand. I love this. Now I'm getting into it. So I'm waking up in my mystical brain. So, well, let me see. Do you have another story or two that pops into your head about your life?
My life is as I live it. I find that my life is kind of like in chapters. Even though they say that you shouldn't live your life in chapters, my life winds up in chapters, and the chapters have a beginning and an ending, and something carries over into the next chapter. But it's always an evolution. It's always kind of different. I cut my hair when a new chapter begins. So like when I became a grandfather a year and a half ago, I cut my hair short, and now it's grown back, as you can see. But that's how I mark the transitions in my life. And each of these transitions brings forth something new, something different. It puts me in a new position where I have to see life differently. And I don't like getting old. There's a lot of things that change, and I feel a sense of diminishment in several areas. But at the same time, it's very freeing too, because a lot of the things that I kept inside my head when I thought I had a whole lifetime ahead of me, I don't have to entertain these thoughts anymore. And it becomes more about myself. And, okay, I don't know how much more time I have here, but definitely more than half my life is over. So what do I want to do with the moments, the minutes, the hours, the days, the months, ahead? And although not everything that I want to happen will happen, a lot of the things I want to happen will happen, because I learned some simple tricks earlier on in life that work for me. And one of them is I don't have to know how to do something in order to do it. So I found that what works for me the best is to get a notebook and a pen or a pencil or whatever, and just imagine that I had it. And that's how I got my TV show. That's how I made my movie. I had no idea how to do it, but I decided I wanted to do it. So every day I had asked myself, what can I do today that'll bring me one step closer to making a movie or having a television show? And that's what I did. And for a while, nothing happened. And with the TV show, I got a call from May Eisenberg. She read an article that I wrote that nobody else responded to. And she asked me to be on her show. And I went to her show, and she was panicking because Dr. Gene Cirillo had just left for Jenny Jones. So, and she asked me, can you co-host the show? So I never did it before, but she didn't ask me if I had done it before. She asked me, can I do it? And I was very confident that once I figured out what the flashing lights and things were all about, I could certainly do it. And so that's how the journey started. And you came along very quickly into that journey, and then it became our journey. Again, if I condition myself to ask myself, how can I do this? I don't know how to do it. Or if I'd listened to all the people in my life who were saying, you can't have a TV show. You never went to journalism school, or you never went to acting school, or you've never, done this or done that, or a million different reasons why I couldn't have a TV show. But by believing that I could have one, within a year and a half, I had my own regularly running TV show on UHF and the Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and then in other boroughs, and then on digital. And
you're absolutely right. I think that's a very profound point to take from tonight's discussion, that if you believe something is right for you, there's a good chance that if you hang around and you have a combination of luck magic and whatever, study if necessary. You know, I was totally never would have believed if even 9 years ago you would have said I could become a filmmaker. It would be nuts, you know. I didn't have any particular talent taking pictures growing up with the various cameras the family owned, you know, but there was something about cameras that always fascinated me, like when you do slow motion. I really loved that. And but anyway, I wrote this play based on my first and second books for girls. And I wouldn't have written the play if this guy, I still keep his name right here. Of course, it'll fall on the ground right now that I'm looking for it. But he's a local guy who is a director and does a lot of stuff locally and some stuff in New York. And we met for coffee one day and he said, you know, I think your book is so helpful in girls expressing their needs and their understandings of life. You should write it as a play and I'll help you. You know, we met 4 or 5 times, gave me a lot of ideas about how to write a play. And then he proceeded to help me put on the play locally, you know, all local stuff. And we had 8 or 9 girls who played the girl. We did it so that instead of one actress being the girl, we wanted to bring more girls in. So we divided it up and each of the 8 girls got to be a sort of slice of the character. And then it went really well. We sold out in a room,
Awesome.
In a room, so to speak, but it was great. And then we also, I finally got it produced at a small local theater, and it actually sold out the 6 nights we did it. I mean, it was an amazing adventure. And during that adventure, I went to see Anne Frank that was being done in another playhouse locally in New Jersey. And the girl, of course, who played Anne Frank, I mean, if you can play Anne Frank, you could go into theater and make a living. You're good. It's a very hard part. And her mother was sitting next to me. And I said to her mother something like, you know, I have this little play and I have wondered how it would work as a film. And she said something like, well, I'm sure my daughter would like to be in it if you get it going. And so I had this lovely, talented young actress play, again, the girl in a film version, which we called Falling. No, that wasn't the first one. That was the second one. We called it The Truth, a short film. And it was, again, the truth from the eyes of a child coming of age, going into maybe being 15 or so. And now I'm a filmmaker.
Yes, you are. And you've made multiple films.
Yeah.
And you've pioneered the selfie method. So
I did pioneer them, although they're not so, what's caught on is selfie filmmaking in general, but it still is mostly used by the technical staff, with selfie smart cameras and stuff. The idea of a actor or actress holding, here's my camera, actually holding it at a distance or putting it on a shelf or something and then doing their scene is complicated, and you have to be really good at it.
I can imagine.
Because you're taking 2 jobs and merging them into one, and it's tough. So because I have felt a need to keep going, I have moved past trying to convince teenagers into the next selfie film. It may happen, it may not happen, but I've written some scripts, and I have a script that I want to do in a couple of months. And I'd like to just share this script with you for a minute because I think it's so cute.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I'd love
Yeah,
that.
I love this script. I had a friend who some of this is true. She was one of 7 or 8 children, and every weekend they moved the furniture out of the dining room and they put on music and everyone danced. Her parents had been really good dancers. And the kids, they just made it their Saturday night treat. And I just love that. And I said to her, I'm going to put that like in my head. And one day I'm going to do something with that concept. So in this little film, which probably will run about 5 or 6 minutes, there's a family, mother and father, or grandparents. I'm not sure how we're going to do it. And probably 6 children, 8 ranging in age. And in the first minute or minute and a half, the kids are so normal. The little girl who's like 3 is putting on her teenage sister's makeup. Someone else is hitting a brother. Someone's hiding food under the mattress. They're just being kids. And all of a sudden, maybe there'll be like a chime in the house that goes off or something. That means we're getting ready to dance. And then in the middle of the play, this little film, the kids will dance. I hope they'll do at least one partner dance, very simple waltz, something like that. And then maybe they'll do something that's a little more hip for today's world. But that'll happen, and then it'll quiet down again. And someone will call out dinner in 5 minutes or something. And the kid, one kid will pitch another as they go upstairs and do a little bit of stuff. But basically, that's the film. It's just going from the aggravations of life to this high point and down to normalcy.
That sounds wonderful. I can't wait to see it.
Yes. And the only thing I may try that involves the selfie stuff is I might have the kids have cameras, or some of them, maybe just 2 or 3 will want to do it out of the 6, and let them film, step back and not dance for say 30, 40 seconds and film the other kids and see if they pick up on stuff that the one cameraman is picking up on different stuff.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. This is so wonderful. I love talking to you.
Same here, Barbara.
Yeah, I think what we should do is let your friend come in for 3 or 4 minutes if she wants to, whatever. I'm going to let you direct that.
Hello.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. Well, I have a little story that I'd like to tell about, which is like the suitcase and the banana stories.
Good.
My father was a captain in the Air Force during World War II. He went to a dance in Tampa, Florida. He's crossing the floor to dance with this gorgeous blonde in a white evening dress, who was talking to a little redhead in a pink dress. Well, as he's crossing the floor, someone asks the blonde to dance, and they move off, but he's halfway across the floor, so he keeps walking, and he asks the little redhead to dance. Well, 4 months later, they were married, and they were married 27 years until my mother died. How do you like that?
Wow.
Oh, it's a beautiful story.
One of those
serendipity, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And by the way, I'd love to be in one of your films. I'm an actress, so keep me in mind.
Yes.
You can see me on YouTube, so if you see Hercules, we'll tell you how.
I'll send you the link, Barbara.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I think that's about enough for tonight on meeting your needs. I'm sure we'll come back to these as we go through it. And some of the magic that you're going to see is that if you start working on one of these gateways, you usually find out you have to go through 3 or 4 to even get that one done. So it's almost like each gateway says, oh, it's just me. You can just come and do a good deed. And then the gateway's thinking, oh, you'll be being nicer. You'll be a mentor. You'll have more friends. You'll socialize more. Okay. I don't need to tell you all that. It'll just happen.
And I think I will invite other people to participate if they'd like, and I'll include a link to your book. So this way they can, in addition to watching these shows, they could read the book for themselves and get the full benefit from it. I'll put a link to the Enchanted itself because that's the full version of the
Right.
book.
Yes.
And I want to thank you, Barbara. You're awesome. And I'm glad our paths crossed on the May Eisenberg unique
Yes.
now, like over 20 years ago. And we're still talking, we're still doing creative things together.
Exactly.
Which is fantastic. Your family.
You are too. And just say that my major website is Enchanted Self. Feel free to go there. And if you write to me at barbara.holstein@gmail.com, I will answer unless you sound so weird, I'm afraid to. That's the way, Honestly, I take it seriously when people write to me. So love to hear from you.
And thanks to our wonderful listeners, and thanks to our wonderful audience person, Diana Montfort, who also has a legacy show on our channel. Her show is on Manhattan Neighborhood Network for over 30 years. So now she has a podcast on Mount Olympus. And both of you are among the 5 that have legacy shows where something that was started long ago continues on Blogtalkradio for now, and now on YouTube through Zoom.
It's all good.
Be well, everybody. Until next time, this is us wishing you joyous journeys and amazing adventures. I am Hercules Invictus, and I bid you all a good night. And today was a holiday, wasn't it, Purim?
It's Purim, yes. I hope to get into it at least somewhat tomorrow.
I was
Yes.
given Purim cookies today.
Yeah. Oh, good.
I did
Yeah.
mythology, so
I love them. Yes. The Hamantaschen, maybe. That's what we call
maybe.
them. Yeah.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night.
Mm.